welcome to Playback. I'm Nate.
I'm Brandon.
We are two music producers, and this is the show where we discuss different albums. We take turns picking. This week, Brandon has picked the album Pretty Hate Machine by Nin. By Nine Inch Nails.
Nin. Nine Inch Nails.
By the Knights of Nin.
That's right.
Brandon.
Yes.
What is Pretty Hate Machine, for those who've never heard it, and why did you pick Pretty Hate Machine?
Oh, yeah, good question. Well, Pretty Hate Machine is Nine Inch Nails' first album. So I think, Nine Inch Nails is one of those household names, big band.
They
Trent
kind of
Reznor.
are.
Yeah, huge band. They were big in the 90s, big in the 2000s as well. And I mean, these days, Trent Reznor and the newer member of Nine Inch Nails, Atticus Ross, they score a bunch of movies. Mm-hmm. Whoa.
He's probably more well known for that these days than Nine Inch Nails even.
Yes.
I mean,
he's scoring the movies.
Yeah, he's had a complete second life at this point as a film composer, which has been honestly so inspiring and fun to watch as a musician. He's basically, his whole trajectory in life is one I am extremely envious of, and wish I could take a path like that. It's so cool.
Yeah. Trent Reznor is a really good example of someone who started from obscurity, started from nothing, came from a small town. A lot of really, really successful and famous musicians grew up in big cities, grew up in places that have a really robust music scene of some sort. Not everybody, obviously, but a lot of people do. And I know that that's something that you and I, can identify with, and a challenge that we've found in our musical lives is that we come from a small ass town in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And so did he. And so, he's one of these examples of somebody like that.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of the movies that he scored, so he did The Social Network.
A million now.
Right?
He's done pretty much all of Fincher's stuff since Social Network has been Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross. He's done all
Did they win the Oscar for that one? They were at least nominated. I think they may have freaking won the Oscar for Best Score for that, I think.
I'd be shocked if
check that out.
He hasn't won several Oscars at this point, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he hasn't. They didn't even nominate him this year for his score for Challengers, which was awesome. I loved that score.
That's right.
It was really cool. One of my favorite scores that they've done together, and that didn't even get nominated this year. So I don't know. The Academy's fucking dumb. So I don't know. I'm sure it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't let him win it or anything. But
yeah, I mean, people are definitely citing that as one of the biggest Oscar snubs this year, right?
Big time.
Challengers is not nominated for score.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
We're already on a side tangent though. So Pretty Hate Machine though is his. Not a film score. This is the first thing he ever did, coming out of pretty much obscurity. Nobody really knew who he was. I think he kind of had recorded some demos of this material, and then luckily for him, got together with a bunch of really big producers from the time. But yeah, it's how would you describe it? It's very aggressive, very angry, very nihilistic album. It is kind of drenched in deep, dark synths and really loud, angry industrial guitars. It's a really dark album, I would describe it as. But at the same time, super fun at times. Really fun. You can kind of dance to this, or maybe mosh would be more appropriate.
Yeah.
And I think that was all intentional and by design when he was creating this. But yeah, how would you describe it?
Yeah, you use the word industrial there, and I think that's the main and easiest way to understand this is that it's an industrial rock, industrial metal album. Yeah. And it's one of the biggest ones in the history of that style of music. It's both in terms of just like its popularity and its how much it influenced other people who make industrial rock, but also like where it sits in the timeline. You know, it's relatively early for such a big and widely successful one, because industrial rock had been around for a while since already when this came out in
it's pretty late.
1989.
This is like a really late entrant in like that style of music, because you got like Ministry and New Order and Depeche Mode. Those are all, they'd been out forever before that. Before this came out, they'd been out the whole decade. They'd been doing stuff.
When did that start? When did the industrial thing really
earlier
get started?
80s? I want to say at least 5 years before this. You know, at least.
Yeah. So this is 89. So this is but and this is one of the reasons why I picked this album, is because it's really interesting. Because when it was my turn to pick this album, I wanted to pick something from the 90s. And it was really interesting because, like, when I thought about, okay, when I was a kid, like, what music do I remember? What like cool music do I like remember associating with the 90s? And this was one of the first ones that came up in my mind, but it came out in 89. But to me, I think that is what makes this album so important in the development of industrial rock and rock music as a wider thing, is because I think that this album was very much ahead of its time.
I totally agree with you. Like, one of my bigger takeaways from listening to this again was, like, this really is a sum of all the great industrial and electronic and synth-pop stuff that came before it, from like Gary Newman to New Order, Depeche Mode, you know, all, even like a lot, even like poppier kind of 80s synth-based stuff, like electronic drums-based kind of stuff. It is a sum of all that stuff in a lot of ways, but at the same time, this is totally like this is almost like the first like grunge record or like alternative like 90s record. Like it's like when you think of like the Seattle scene and all that stuff, you know, this is like way removed from all that stuff. Totally different like scene, different influences, everything. Like this, Trent Reznor was so influential on the 90s. Like, he's such a big deal. His attitude, like his aesthetic, his the way he viewed the world is kind of how, when you think of like the really like nihilistic, like grungy guys, like I think you're kind of, we're almost like superimposing a lot of Trent Reznor on those guys too. At least like as far as like his worldview and like his attitude and his music and stuff goes.
Yeah, and his attitude toward the music industry and his philosophies about making and releasing and consuming music. Yeah. And like, you know,
it's a really amazing like inflection point, right? It's like, it's almost where the 80s kind of stopped and the 90s began. Like it's like real, it's like a little musical atom bomb that went off and like just kind of really changed everything. And like, yeah, I mean, I even would like take movies like The Matrix and shit like that. It's like, you don't even get to that point in culture where you have Keanu Reeves in like a trench coat doing like fucking, you know, what he was doing without Trent Reznor. I really think.
Okay, dude, exactly. So I was literally gonna say that this music is so ahead of its time that people were still making music that sounds just like this album. This music sounds more like it was made in 1999.
Absolutely.
This sound was in vogue 10 years after this came out, and it was popular at the time. And that, by the way,
go ahead.
That is like probably the easiest way to understand, like, what do people mean when they say influential? Okay, because that's a term that's really used a lot when people are discussing music and musicians. So influential, one of the most influential bands of the 60s or something, you know what I mean? One of the most influential bands of rock and roll and all this stuff. But like, what the hell does that mean exactly? And the way that you can tell the way that you can see it is basically how much later in time were people doing what resembles that.
Yeah.
You know?
How long is it still a reflection in the mirror of the culture, of the zeitgeist, right? And you're so
for
right.
how long can you still hear it?
Right.
Because for a lot of music, it is pop. It's in fashion, and then the fashion changes.
Yeah.
And it's different. You know, this is like, you listen to the soundtrack of The Matrix, the soundtrack of movies like Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and shit like that, like late 90s stuff that, and even like you were saying, the philosophies and the outlook as well, that nihilism that is like everything about 1999
permeates
Fight Club and
the 90s. Yeah.
1999 is like the height of this, just like disaffected, like whatever, man. I'm just gonna wear my black leather gloves that don't have any fingers on them and dye my hair black and basically look exactly like Trent Reznor did when Pretty Hate Machine came out.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You know, and it goes to say it's not even like just that this album in particular was still relevant, even though it was. It's like he was still super relevant. Like he put out The Fragile that year, right? And like, even though I think that he kind of hit a little stumbling block with that one, as far as like sales and stuff goes or whatever. But like, dude, nobody who knew, you know, what they were doing as a musician was like skipping that record in 1999, you know?
Dude, I remember everyone was freaking out about The Fragile. The Fragile was a huge hit, at least among those who were interested in that, you know, like I don't know how much headway it made in terms of like making new fans or not, but but dude, for me, in the 90s, in the late 90s, fucking Trent Reznor was huge. Nine Inch Nails was huge. They were like one of the most respected even like rock acts around. Yeah, it's
crazy. Even like Fight Club, like the Fight Club soundtrack used the Dust Brothers, right? Who they're the guys who did, I believe they did some Beastie. They did like the Paul's Boutique. They did Odelay, I believe, and they did Fight Club, right? And they're an interesting choice for Fincher to have used, because to me they were, I don't want to say they were like aping Trent Reznor necessarily, but they were definitely kind of like stumbling upon a lot of similar things in like a parallel way. They were kind of doing a lot of the same stuff as him, and it's just interesting to me that like there's a universe where the first Fincher-Reznor collaboration, it easily could have just been Fight Club the first time they worked together, and it would have been perfect. Like it would have been great, you know?
Yeah. And like it would be inaccurate to place all of the credit for this sound and this aesthetic just on Trent Reznor. It's not like he invented it in a vacuum or anything like that.
Right.
It's just that this is like a really prominent example of pushing it forward and in my opinion, like raising the bar, just kind of like big elevating how sophisticated can the music in this style be, you know, like how much more complex, how many more kind of new, interesting, nuanced, groundbreaking musical ideas, and the traditionally how like quality can the lyric writing be, and the craftsmanship of the music by traditional standards, you know, by the standards of older music, can we really hold it to, like, and we'll get into all of that and kind of point out some specific examples of like the really, really high quality musical ideas and lyrical techniques and things that are going on in this album, which again is his first album.
First record, yeah. Also, like, it's like, I'm sure you can appreciate this as well as a producer who, like, you and I both, I mean, we do a lot of stuff together, but we both have a long history of creating and producing music like completely alone, right? Just sitting in a room and just making sounds and putting it out into the world, right? Like I have a long history of doing that. You've got a long history of doing stuff like that. This to me is one of the best examples of someone literally creating an album pretty much alone. Like the only other people I can really point to would be like Prince, and he would point to Prince too. Prince is thanked in the liner notes.
Yeah, Prince is the ultimate example of that.
Prince is amazing. But
Lenny Kravitz does that. Yeah.
There's a lot of examples, but like this, like as far as like modern music goes, like
Tame Impala also. Tame Impala fucking mixes his own stuff.
Sure.
Oh my God. Okay. Anyway,
Trent mixed some of this as well. There's a couple of Trent Reznor mixes on Pretty Hate Machine, but this for me is like the oldest example that you could still call like, no, this is modern music. Like you can hear today's world reflected in this stuff, even in 1989.
Yes.
But it's also an example of someone who did it alone, like who basically made it by themselves. Like
it's interesting that you say that, because he for sure wrote it by himself. He for sure, like all of the musical, I don't know about all. Like what this is, the concept of what this is and the songs and all that stuff. Yes, this was like a man by himself with a tape recorder type of a thing. Mm-hmm. But the actual making of these tracks that we hear when we put this on, this was one of my sort of like impressions of this go round of listening to it in preparation for this episode. It really stood out to me how, like, oh my God, Trent Reznor always works with collaborators.
That's true.
It sort of stood out to me, like, because he is understood to be one of the paragons of a one-man show, a one-man production machine. And you know, he's so frequently used as an example of that. And in so ways, it is true.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. But like, he doesn't truly do it truly alone.
Sure. He's got 4 of probably the most famous producers
right
at the time.
We should talk about them and who these guys are, because these are notable people who he works with and then continues to work with in some cases. Yeah. You know? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It just like really stood out to me. It was earlier today, actually. Mm-hmm. I was like, dude, maybe one of the smartest freaking things that he does is that he like doesn't fully isolate himself.
But it is you're right, but it is like Nine Inch Nails is for a long time was one guy. It's just him. Right. You know, he's Nine Inch Nails. He played. I think there's a lot of myths around this too, and I think you're kind of hitting on that right now as well, which is that like for the longest time I'd heard the story, I should say, that he was a janitor at a studio and he recorded Pretty Hate Machine on his downtime in the studio or whatever. That's not entirely true. Those are demos he recorded that he showed to labels and stuff, and then they liked them, and then they made this, right? And he made them with like super famous producers.
People who he already had been idolizing this entire time.
Right. Yeah. I will say, just before we dive into the production and everything, I did my impression. I've loved this album forever. Like, I've always really liked Nine Inch Nails. I've never been like a nerd about Nine Inch Nails, but I've always really admired Trent Reznor, and I've loved this album in particular, and I love Downward Spiral. I never really got into Fragile. I would like to, though. With Teeth was the big one when I was in high school. That was a huge record. I remember just nonstop hearing With Teeth on the radio. And then the one that really got me as a kid was fucking Year Zero. Did you ever listen to Year Zero?
I don't think I've ever listened to it. By the way,
I love Year Zero.
I remember you reminded me of something like a little disclaimer, caveat, like heads up that I wanted to say at the beginning of this discussion when he said how much some people can nerd out on Nine Inch Nails.
Dude, yeah.
Which is like this will happen a lot in in the lifespan of this show and the different albums that we talk about. But this is a good example of, this is an artist that there is a very deep and dedicated fan base for that really goes so into minutia about every detail and with encyclopedic knowledge of this artist, right?
It reminds me of something I read today, speaking of the fan base being insane.
Yeah.
In a nice way. I read something where it was like a fan on like a forum had said, news came out at a certain point in time. I don't know when this was. News came out that Trent Reznor's dog died. And a fan on the forum was like, dude, we're eating good again. Trent's going to be depressed.
Oh,
this is amazing. This is great. like Trent's music's always better when he's in a really negative headspace. Like they were like discussing it like they were excited. Like, oh man,
getting graphs of like his life events and his fucking his tragedies and his periods of depression and addiction and shit. Man.
But
charting it. Yeah.
Speaking of that kind of stuff, that was kind of one of my bigger takeaways on this. I struggled listening to this time because even though I love this record, it is really negative. It is a really, like, it's coming from a really hard place and a really sad place and a really negative place. And it's like the current like political climate and like, you know, the world right now. It's like, it was gnarly because like, I think a lot of people in the past may respond to certain like political climates like the one we're in with something like a With T or like a Pretty Hate Machine or that kind of attitude as like a response, right? But like nobody's there. Everyone's just like sad right now. Everyone like just feels defeated. So it was kind of hard for me to get into that to this record this time. Not saying anything negative about the record. I think it's more just like it's a bummer time right now to like indulge in like some really negative music or music coming from kind of a sad place. You know what I mean?
I mean, to put this in context of American history, I mean, he was recording this when what happens after 8 years of Reagan?
Right.
You get Bush.
You get Bush, dude.
It's like, fuck.
You get the first Iraq War, the forgotten one.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm going to write Pretty Hate Machine and make myself feel better.
Produced by, I've got the album here, produced by Trent Reznor with Flood, John Fryer, Keith LeBlanc, and Adrian Sherwood.
Yes. So these are all, notable people, and and very relevant and very pertinent to this music that he was making. Okay. So sometimes in the music industry, when you got like a new artist that a record label or someone who's representing a new artist, they want to make them pop with a bang, enter the scene in a big way. And so you want to connect them with a very established and very well-respected producer or 4 or 5, This is not strange. This happens all the time. Mm. But I think that...
And it's smart. It's a smart thing. It's a smart thing to do.
It's tried and true, baby.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that something that happens a lot of the time is that there's a sort of a mismatch. Mm. And this mismatch can sometimes produce like some of the greatest music that we have to listen to, right?
For sure.
The product of a new artist with this certain sensibility who's coming from this direction, meeting up with an established producer who has this philosophy, and they don't meet, and they sort of clash, and something awesome comes out of it, or something terrible and that wasn't successful comes out of it, or just that they don't necessarily clash. They're just they're just from different worlds or whatever,
right.
But this, I feel, is an example of the people that got paired with Trent Reznor to make this album are like...
It's like peanut butter and jelly.
Exactly. They're the exact, it's like peanut butter and more, also better peanut butter.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
So you have, so Keith LeBlanc, who's one of them.
I'm not super familiar with most of these guys other than Adrian Sherwood is like a name that I know very well, or I've heard.
Because we come from the world of dub reggae.
Right.
And Adrian Sherwood is a dub reggae producer.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that makes Adrian Sherwood someone with sort of like, being well suited to dub reggae and sort of having a superpower for dub is he's like someone who describes himself as really not having any musical training, musical knowledge, not really an ear or particularly caring much for the more technical parts of music and music theory. Is more of like a sounds and textures based kind of a person. And so that's kind of his main thing that he brings to the table is like soundscape type stuff.
Which great for this record.
Is all over this. That is a huge aspect of the way that Pretty Hate Machine sounds is that it's not just tones and notes and music. It's like fucking there's non-musical elements.
Well, you can hear why getting into the world of film and sound design and video game soundtracks and all that stuff that Trent Reznor did after this, you can hear why that was such a natural fit for this guy because it sounds so like effort. It not only does it sound effortless on this, it sounds like integral to like what he does, and it is now.
Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of that is stuff he picked up from the producers on this. The other producer I'm relatively familiar with just because I think he had such like a crazy pedigree was I think Flood is the other guy.
Flood is the pedigree guy. Yes.
He did like Depeche Mode and U2 and fucking like
Smashing Pumpkins.
Pumpkins. He just he did like all the big bands. Like
he produced Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. He produced Joshua Tree.
Right.
He produced what was the U2 album after Joshua Tree?
I can't remember.
Rattle and Hum or whatever the fuck.
Oh, I think that's a later one, isn't it?
I don't know.
Joshua Tree's 80s. That would have been this around his time.
He produced that, and he produced Depeche Mode.
Depeche Mode, yeah.
So to me, Nine Inch Nails. So
that was like Reznor's like number one influence going into this was Depeche Mode.
So after Pretty Hate Machine, Nine Inch Nails really sort of shifts sonic gears, and intentionally so. Trent Reznor intentionally wanted to make his music more inaccessible and to make it way more like texture based and like a sound story kind of a thing and make it like deeper and murkier and like harder to find the song. Like you have to like wait fucking 5 minutes before you hear a song that you can bob your head to intentionally. And he left this behind after Pretty Hate Machine because Pretty Hate Machine is not like that. And that is one of the reasons why this is my favorite Nine Inch Nails album is because I don't have to wait 9 hours to hear a goddamn song when I put this one on. It's just bam, bam, bam. Just like dope ass song, one right after the other.
Yes.
And so this is the one where it wears that Depeche Mode influence on its sleeve. It is a industrialized version of Depeche Mode.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, so who did he have in his corner helping him achieve that sound? How about the guy who fucking makes the Depeche Mode sound?
Right.
You know, it makes so much sense. And I never knew that before doing the research for this episode. Like learning things like that, like, oh, he had the Depeche Mode producer work on it. It's like there were so many moments where it's like, of course,
of course
he did.
Yeah.
But it also dispels a bit of that mystery and that mystique of Trent Reznor, which is that he is a perfectly crystallized fucking genius who is capable of anything in isolation. It sort of chips away at that because it made you think like, oh, this is a guy from a small town in Pennsylvania who listened to Depeche Mode on the radio. And then he went and he made his own record and he got that exact sound and elevated it. Wow.
Well,
that's cool. It's like, not exactly. He did, but he had the help of the fucking person who made that also. Like,
have you heard? So I couldn't agree with you more because, like, my opinion of this and him before going into this episode was what you just said, was like, oh, he was a janitor, and while he was done mopping toilets at night, he'd sneak in and like
made Pretty Hate Machine by bit. Yeah.
No, dude. So
that's
the
not
stuff,
how it went.
The stuff he made when he was a runner at a studio in Cleveland. Have you heard that stuff?
No, I haven't.
I listened to it today.
What is it like?
It is. So the things that are the most fascinating to me about it were a lot of the stuff that, like, exact sounds and exact parts that he just took from the demos and are on Pretty Hate Machine. Like, you can tell, like, there's like that what's that one really big bass line part?
The slap bass thing?
The slap bass, yeah. Yeah.
Beep, beep, beep.
So that is just like taken straight from the demo and it's on the record. And there's like a bunch of sounds like that. Yeah. So like there are little elements that he had crystallized prior to going into Pretty Hate Machine, but I can't, and it's really interesting, but I can't tell you how different it is. It's so different.
I would guess it's missing the Depeche Mode-ness of it.
Yes.
It's missing the...
You already hit on one thing that I also love about this album, which is how concise the songs are, how poppy the songs are, the verse, chorus, verse-ness of it is. So the demos, it is about half as many songs. It's like half this track list, but twice as long.
Oh my God.
It's about an hour. It's about an hour and a half. The demos are about an hour and a half. And it's 6 or 7 of these songs, maybe 5 or 6 of these songs, but they're all stretched out to like 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes.
Wow.
They're all like really long. They're still really cool. He's still got like that kind of angst to him, but there's also like kind of way more of like a pop 80s sheen to it, to the music itself. Like he still sounds really like kind of pissed and angsty and stuff, but like the synths that he's using, the choices that he makes, like instrumentation wise, like he's still using kind of the computery bleep blops and stuff, but like the synths and stuff like don't always like reflect those sounds that he got on Pretty Hate Machine. Like it really feels like by the time he got to Pretty Hate Machine, I think he went through a breakup or something. I'd heard, I don't know that for a fact, but I think I've heard that he went through some kind of bad breakup, then he was in a darker place and then made Pretty Hate Machine. But also I really think that like these producers that we're talking about, when they got a hold of him, they were like, dude, you need to like crystallize and synthesize and distill the fucking anger stuff that is in your music, because that is where the that is where the gold is to be mined out of this shit. Because like this record is so much like harder and aggressive and it's and like ugly and like mean sounding than the demos. Like, and I would say the demos are like, they're like 70% there. It's really cool what he did. It's super fascinating because that's the stuff he really did alone.
Right. Okay. That's what I was going to ask you. Those demos, that part, that is true. He actually did make that by himself.
Just him. Right? Yeah. That is.
And while he was a janitor.
And while he was a runner,
a runner, not a janitor.
So he's
such a big difference, dude.
It is.
You know, it makes for a better story that he was cleaning toilets and you know, you can just picture it in the fucking stupid music biopic thing. He's just like mopping by the door and like peeks his head inside, leans the mop up against the wall and walks over and puts his hands on the mixing console and the music starts to swell. It's like that. Didn't have, and this is why I fucking hate music biopics, dude.
Me too, man.
When they make the one about Trent Reznor, I fucking, you guys, listen to my voice. It's 2025. I'm calling it.
Yeah.
When this movie comes out in 15 years, I'm calling it.
Yeah.
That shot that I just described is gonna be in there.
It'll be head like a hole, and his head's gonna be in a toilet.
Head like a bowl.
Head like a bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's insulting because like he was a runner and he was like an assistant, and he also like he's credited as like an engineer at this studio. Like, so he was like working there.
A janitor.
It's
God,
not a janitor.
It pisses me off.
But it's like
that
that is like the first thing they say is like he made. This is the story. Trent Reznor made Pretty Hate Machine in the off hours while he was a janitor at a studio. And it's like, God, you're just so missing so many details about what the actuality of his situation was. He was like an assistant engineer. He was like helping run sessions, do sessions. He was also a runner. So he would go, pick up coffees for people or pick up lunch for people or whatever. And he also, guess what? He kept the studio clean. That does not mean janitor though. Like he mopped the floors, he did, but maybe he had similar tasks to what like a janitor might have. I was a runner, okay? I was a runner at a really big studio.
Coveralls with a rag hanging out of his back pocket.
No. And guess what? That's what I pictured forever.
Exactly.
That's what I pictured. That's what
it makes you picture. It's
so fucked up because it's just it's just the misuse of like a title and a word, and it's so stupid. But no, I mean, he had a way bigger role than that. It's just that, yes, he was on probably the bottom rung at the studio, but,
But, he was 22 or something.
He was 20,
like
yeah.
That's how it is. You have to start from the beginning.
Yeah. So he made the demos at night. He basically asked the studio manager, owner, whoever, can I record my own music during the off hours? And the guy said, yeah, the only thing it's going to cost me is some wear on my tape head. So he was like supportive of it. He was cool about it.
That's cool.
It wasn't like, he wasn't like being sneaky about it. It was all above board. And like, from what I've read, the people who worked with him at that studio, they were like, he was like the best employee. Like when he like waxed the floors, it was like he was
he went above and beyond.
He was like
shit the right way the first time and everything. That's cool.
He was like an amazing dude to work with. They loved having him around, and they were like stoked to let him fucking do his thing.
That's cool.
So I don't know. It's interesting. There's a lot of myths that I dispelled for myself while reading about this, which I'm glad. I don't know. I'm glad. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. It is, and I think that it's also healthy for anybody who's got any aspiration or any intention of making music and participating in this, collegiate or whatever you call it, this. What is the word? Not brotherhood, but like
sure.
Those who make music is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm.
Musicians.
It helps to have like a realistic understanding of what people who came before you did,
right? And
to not have it based on fiction and like tall tales. You know what I mean? Like
I feel like
because. And that's what pisses me off so much about music biopics is like for all the young kid musicians out there who was me, like if I really thought like, oh, so you mean all I got to do is be a janitor at a studio, I can make it just like how Trent Reznor did. That robs me of all the insight of what he actually did, which was he wasn't satisfied with just let me get a janitor job. No, he tried, he learned, he got a job as an assistant, as a runner, as an assistant engineer. He was actually having conversations with the guys. He was actually asking, requesting, can I use this gear? Sharing his project with them.
Does that not make way more sense too? Like the fact that he wasn't a janitor, like the fact that he wasn't just that wasn't how he got his start.
Yeah.
He got his start. Like Trent Reznor, the guy that we know, who's like a brilliant sound designer, engineer, musician, producer, everything. Doesn't it make more sense that he got his foot in the door as a fucking an assistant engineer, not like cleaning toilets? Like come on, dude.
Yeah, if the kids actually get his real story, then they're better equipped to like actually follow in his footsteps. You know what I mean?
It's just for me, it's like when I read like media kind of tall tales like this. It's so easy for me to like see right through it now, like that I'm maybe just because I'm older, or I don't know,
and because you've lived through it. You've been working in the music industry since you were like 18 or 19 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, like, the one on
and you know from experience, shit like that is bullshit. Like you hear a story like that. Oh, he made it while he was a janitor, and it's just like,
probably not that simple.
It's kind of a red flag to that.
Yeah,
I really doubt that.
The one that comes to mind from the Beefheart episode was the one I remember when I was reading. Beefheart, he didn't use headphones, and he just listened to the bleed of the music from a crack in the window. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so this is when they were in the real studios. A crack in the window? What are you talking about?
Why would there be a crack in the window?
Or like the window was like open or something. I'm like, why would the window? Have you been into any studio where you can like crack a window?
Able to open? Those windows cannot be opened.
It's like, no, dude, it was just bleed through the window.
Yeah, they just turned it up loud.
Who wrote your hack article just don't know what that means. You don't understand what that means. There's no crack in the window at Sound City or whatever, wherever they recorded that.
You know what really freaks me out, and really it sometimes is like whenever I read on Reddit or anywhere on the internet or just these various tall tales by word of mouth, anything that pertains to what I actually do for a living, and you hear how inaccurate and misguided the common knowledge amongst the civilians is out there. You know, people who don't do what you do for a living, and you hear how misguided it is. What freaks me out is the thought, like, I bet you that kind of misinformation is to that extent for every line of work, and probably every understanding and everything that I think that I know that is insightful about what other people do for a living is just as fucked up and full of bullshit.
Now add like 400 years to like a story like that. Like imagine like the amount of bullshit telephone that's happened over the course of like any historical event or
it's a big ass game of telephone, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, to get back to the producers of this record. So since we were speaking about Flood, right? It's something that really, really solidified to me how ahead of its time Pretty Hate Machine sounds is I listened to another album that Flood produced, which is the Depeche Mode album Violator.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one.
It's my favorite Depeche Mode album. It's the one that's got Personal Jesus and Enjoy the Silence and Blue Dress, which is my favorite song on there. But so he made that after this. Violator came out in 1990.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. You're right.
When you listen to Pretty Hate Machine and then you listen to Violator sounds like it came out like 8 years before Pretty Hate Machine.
Wow.
In comparison, it is so production-wise like simplistic. It just sounds like the envelope had been pushed much less further at this point in time. It's just like the vibe that I get.
Yeah.
You know?
You're so right. Like the full cultural impact of this record of Pretty Hate Machine, I don't think was truly felt until like the early 90s. But that is interesting that someone like Flood, who was there prior to Reznor getting his hands on Depeche Mode and then making Pretty Hate Machine and then going back to Depeche Mode, there wasn't any like carryover from Flood, maybe.
Well, it's a really, it just points out a really beautiful thing about collaboration, which is like at the heart of making music, which is that Flood was really important to Trent Reznor because Flood could do things that he couldn't, but does that speak to? But it goes the other way too. Yeah, Flood moved on, but he did not possess the ability to do some things that Trent Reznor can do. You know, like, you see what I mean? Like we each have something that our collaborator doesn't have. You know what I mean?
Or does it speak to maybe something about Depeche Mode You know, maybe Flood did.
Right.
Maybe Flood did say, "Hey, Depeche Mode, like this is some new shit I learned, and like, can you do it or do it?" You know, and maybe
no thanks.
Maybe they didn't want to, or maybe they didn't. I don't know. Maybe they couldn't, or something. Even though that record fucking rocks, it's a great record.
It does rock.
Yeah.
But and I only ever would have had any kind of thought like that about Violator. It's only because I listened to them side by side.
Right.
Because I listened to them in comparison, you know? Every time before in my entire life that I've ever listened to Violator, it never sounds like that. It's like, wow, 1990. This was like pushing the envelope into a new decade. Like, yeah, I can hear it. This is creative shit, you know?
It's wild because you're kind of hitting on something that it's almost hard. It's hard to pin down is like, why is Pretty Hate Machine so different from the rest of his shit? And it's like, I want to say it's Flood, but then you hear, or the other producers, but then you hear the stuff that they did after this. And it's like, you don't hear this in that later stuff necessarily everywhere. And it's
because Flood was with him for all the later shit too.
That's true.
Flood also worked on Broken and on Downward Spiral.
Yeah.
And maybe even on The Fragile, did he?
But then it's like, you know, a lot of the stuff that kind of the more indulgent stuff that I think Reznor does now, maybe in like his film scores, and kind of something you hit on earlier, which was like how these songs just like hit right off the bat, whereas like a lot of his other stuff, it can kind of meander for a minute and it like kind of takes its time, and it's like he kind of builds a bigger like soundscape before like diving right into like a song or whatever. And it's like, what is the it's hard to articulate like what why is this one so different from all the other Nine Inch Nails shit and all of his scores and stuff?
The closest thing that I ever heard that speaks to the answer why is there's an interview that he was giving. I think it was on MTV or some MTV type, type show with this, like young, super hot female interviewer, and then Trent Reznor sitting there with his leather jacket talking. I think it was in the lead up to the Downward Spiral, okay, which is his 1994 album. That's the next like full album to come out after this. In true Trent Reznor style, it took him 5 years to release his next album.
Although Broken is a sick little little holdover. I love that EP. That's one of my favorite like EPs from any band ever. It's so sick.
Right. Broken is an EP that he released in 91,
92.
92. And it's funny. It's an EP. It has 8 songs.
Right.
So, okay, is that an EP? I don't know. Anyway, but so the Downward Spiral, that's the one that like really made him who he is. And also too, that was the first album that had the now more complex, more 3-dimensional, more nuanced, more textured, deeper production style that he would generally kind of, exist in for the rest of the time. And he was saying in this interview, sort of what I was talking about before, which is that he intentionally stepped away from something that is accessible. He was saying like Pretty Hate Machine. He's like, yeah, people liked it, and that like annoys me. He's like, I listen to it now and I think it's stupid.
Yeah.
He's like, it's so like he didn't like Pretty Hate Machine in the years after making it.
Well, I think he also assumed that no one would hear it, and that's kind of why it's so like hard on his sleeve kind of shit. I don't know. We should wait on that before
whatever. Just record, just toss it out or whatever.
When we get to like lyrics and stuff, I think we can touch on that a little bit more. But like, yeah.
But anyway, to speak to this good question that you're asking is, I think is because by his own sensibilities, where it's at is that fucking harder to reach. Like you got to go deeper down the spiral. You got to go deeper into the horrible depths of my dark mind, man. That's where I want you to go. Like I don't want to play this dance stuff for you. I don't want to play this like cool bop in the goth club type shit. Like I think that's stupid. I think he really thought that was stupid. He wanted to like scare people and challenge people. He wanted people to get super emo with him.
Yeah.
He wanted people to sit around and cry with him.
He seems like a really intense guy. I don't know if I could hang out with him.
And, real quick before we move away from the producers, I do want to mention that one of the other ones, Keith LeBlanc. Do you know who that is?
No.
So Keith LeBlanc is the person who made what is considered to be the very first song to use and be based around samples.
Okay, so this is a great segue into we need to I think we should dive into how did he make this Pretty Hate Machine? What are the sounds? What is the palette? What are the paints that he's using? Because this is you talk about Depeche Mode, right? A lot, and I think that's a really good comparison point. One, because shared producers, they were a huge influence on Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails, whatever. But the biggest difference is Depeche Mode was a band, right? They were guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, band. You could hear all those influences on this, but the biggest difference is that this was crafted without a band intentionally. He deliberately did not want to use a band on this. And the way he kind of got around, all of this sounding. He was
going to be his own band.
Yeah, and he pretty much is. I mean, he pretty much plays everything on this.
Yes.
But I mean, we should talk about I think a really important thing we can't gloss over this, which is the fact that this is basically made on 80s Mac computers.
Yes.
And it's an 80s Mac. I'm talking picture the really shitty early 80s Mac computers,
amber and black.
Yeah,
on the screen.
That's pretty much how he sequenced a lot of stuff. A lot of the sounds come from that. And then he had a couple Prophet 5s and and I think this was more for the demos specifically. These examples I'm bringing, but a lot of those sounds carried over to this record. But it's really interesting to me that the digital nature of this, there are, because some of the things he would do on this is he would sample something and then he would pitch it down. And then what you get when you do that a lot of times is this really horrible digital artifacting. That usually you want to avoid.
Crunchiness and distortion and the ruining of the sound, basically.
Yeah, but it's digital distortion. It's not analog distortion. Analog distortion can sound really soft and it's a desirable kind of distortion that we've kind of grown as consumers of music to really enjoy that kind of sound because it's a soft, warmer kind of thing. Whereas digital distortion, there's a lot of it on this record, is really harsh and angular and sharp, and he made it. It's something I fucking hate, honestly. It really bothers me when I hear it. But on this record, he uses it in a very artistic and creative way in so many examples throughout the record. You just hear this kind of almost like static. It almost sounds like tape hiss, but it's not. It is definitely an Apple computer overclocked and a sample that is pitched 100 semitones too low for where it should be. And I to me it's that is a lot of what is so ahead of its time on this, is because so much of that stuff became in vogue 10, 15 years later, where it's you do a sample where it sounds like a CD skipping or something like that, right? And it's he was kind of achieving sounds like that on this, in the 80s,
Yeah. And that is a really good point about Trent Reznor, because being a figure of the industrial rock scene, being a figure of this alternative, black garment wearing, nihilistic, you know what I mean? He's from the same tribe as what Marilyn Manson would come from, and other bands like that, right? Mm-hmm. So one of their currencies is transgressiveness, right? What sacred rules can you break flagrantly and on purpose and make a statement in breaking these rules, right? What is transgressive? And the thing that stands out to me on this record is that like the place in the music where he's transgressive is more so it's in the textures. It's not in what the music is. Like you were saying,
yes.
It actually has very traditional verse, chorus, bridge, another chorus, you know, and when we get into to some lyrical moments, you'll be able to see like he has some fucking Rodgers and Hammerstein level like lyrical like poetic wordplay going on that is like very that would hold up. You know, they follow the traditional concepts of how to write good lyrics. He's not transgressive in that way. It's not like, oh, I'm going to write words that don't rhyme and the lyrics for the song is going to be nothing but fuck you, why don't you love me? Fuck you, why don't you love me? And that's going to be the only lyric. You know, it's not transgressive in that way. It's transgressive in how you're talking like, okay, I'm going to push digital distortion in your face.
Yeah.
I'm going to make the texture of this guitar. I'm going to make the texture of this drum.
Like
I'm going to fuck with it. It's going to be quote unquote wrong.
Yeah.
But the rhythm that it's playing though, that's going to be sophisticated as fuck actually.
Yeah.
That's actually going to be highly refined. But the tone of that drum
is going to be fucked.
It's going to make you want to turn this record off.
Yeah.
You know, like, which I would imagine a lot of people felt that way in 1989 before this sound became in vogue.
You know,
later,
it reminds me of a great quote that I'm not going to be able to remember who said this right now, but someone basically pointed out that take any era of music, film, whatever, and take the flagship technology of that era. The stuff that we will like remember and that people will later try to emulate or use as like a tool is typically that technology being pushed too far, right? So like think of like what's the example?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, dude, this is good. Yeah.
Think of what's the example of that in the 60s? It's like, dude, fucking plugging a guitar straight into the board and it's too distorted and or
it's
Chuck Berry
Revolution 9 by the Beatles.
Yeah. Or think of like my favorite example of this is like think of like vaporwave right now, right? Vaporwave is like this whole musical movement where it is all of the sounds are sounds of like the sounds of computers. And it's like, imagine like using dial-up internet, the dial-up internet tone as like a primary sound in your song, right? We all remember that.
The sound of a modem connecting.
The sound of a fucking modem, right? Or the sound of like, you've got mail. Like it's like these sounds that are like, we remember from that time period as being like really kind of like the dial-up sound was like horrible. It was like fucking hell on earth when you heard that on the other line. But it is the sound of, it's like the sound of that era that is like the wrong thing, right? It's the thing we all wanted to get away from. And yet it's the thing we remember the most. And now it's the thing that people use in their music now. And that you can find that in so many examples. Like same with like, I talked about like, you know, people use like that, like CD skipping thing, right? That's like huge now. Like the sound of a CD skipping when I was a kid, it made me want to fucking blow my head off, right? It like drove me insane.
Throw my Discman on the ground.
Yeah, but now it is like, it is just a tool that people use. It's like people want to get there on purpose now. And I think he saw that. It's crazy that he kind of entrenched his own music in that in the time, right? Like he didn't
wait till later. He was doing it at the time. Yeah.
No, and it wasn't one of those things either where, you know, a lot of times you hear like you hear this with like filmmakers or musicians or something where they'll say like, oh, like tape and this is like such a pain in the ass and like I don't get why people say it sounds so good. And now it's like people just put a tape emulator on their track just to make it sound a little more fucked up, right? But it's like he didn't wait 20 years for it to become in vogue again, to do it on purpose, or even better yet, it wasn't one of those things where he was like, God, like, oh, Pretty Hate Machine's good and I get why people like it, but anytime I tried to get a sound, it's like I got this digital sound all over it, this digital distortion on everything, and it drove me fucking crazy. Like, I hate that. I wish I could go back and change it, It's like, no, dude, he was fucking pushing
he turned it up more. He's like, distortion in your face.
He was pushing this really rudimentary gear further than it could go at the time.
Because this leads me into something else that I wanted to talk about, is because for him, the most important thing, and this is why I believe he was transgressive with the texture, is to him, the most important aspect of what he was doing is the texture of it. That's where he's trying to express himself. He's trying to express himself with the sensation of this sound, not what the music of this sound is. It's more like, how do you feel? What does it do to your lizard brain? What does it do to your feelers, to your emotions when I hit you with this? That's why he wants, because he wants to induce what that does to your brain when you hear, you know? So here, this is, let me read you a quote, okay?
Sure. I love quotes. Honestly, I'm very pro quote on the show. I don't ever have quotes prepared, but I like that Brandon does, so I'm very pro quote. I love
quote. Okay, I'm glad that you're into it and that I don't have to make you suffer through it.
No.
So this is him. I think this interview is from 1990. Okay. So at the time, Pretty Hate Machine is the only thing that he's ever released, and someone is interviewing him about the process of making Pretty Hate Machine, and he says it was emotion-based rather than technique-based in the sense of great playing. Also, being in Cleveland, there was nobody to really collaborate with. If there was going to be a guitar on the record, I would have to play it. Same sort of thing with the bass. And I'm not a guitar player. Basically, I'm a keyboard player. So the challenge was to come up with a style that would fit the music. It got to the point in high school or junior high where it was like, why don't you take fewer classes in school and study with this nun and practice 10 hours a day? Basically, what he's talking about is his classical training on the piano.
Become a classical piano player, classical musician.
Yes, this is what he was engaged in when he was a kid. Okay, continue. To sacrifice a normal life to become a concert pianist really had no appeal to me. There's a beauty in being able to play back someone else's music with incredible technique, but in another sense, you're limited to, you shouldn't play that with rubato because it wasn't written that way. I began to ask myself, why am I playing this instrument? Is it to excel in technique? To me, that's a bit stifling. Rather than be great at one instrument, I'd rather have a general knowledge of a few and work in a more composition-oriented environment. Also, I had that teenage rebellious streak, so I was like, forget it. I didn't look at another piece of music. I started approaching things differently. I could lay my fingers on the keys, and if I thought about it, I could figure out what chord it would be, but I started to go more from instinct. I know what it's going to sound like without thinking about what it is. So, and again, the first sentence of all that, it was emotion-based rather than technique-based. So basically, Trent Reznor, for musicians who are into Nine Inch Nails, which is a lot of musicians are into Nine Inch Nails, the reason is because of how sophisticated Trent Reznor's music is.
Yeah.
He's putting very unique, very creative, and very original musical concepts in his music. And musicians love seeing that because it's kind of rare. And a lot of the stuff that he does, he's the only guy who's doing it. But this is interesting to me because he has that on the freaking back burner.
Right.
He has that part without even trying.
Right.
What he's consciously paying attention to is what you were talking about is like, oh, you mean I could just make this all fucked up sounding and just make it feel like that. Yes, let's do that. You know, like
that.
What feeling can I make you feel? And I'll just use whatever notes are needed to convey that.
I mean, you know? That, and I think he takes that a step further with, as far as like the emotionality of the music. He underlines that a step further beyond just like how fucked up the textures are with the lyrical content and his performance. Like,
yeah,
his, like, I don't know that there is a rock musician alive who can convey raw emotionality better than Trent Reznor. Like, you just listen to this stuff and it is just like a raw exposed nerve.
And that's why it makes so much sense to read this stuff about that. It's not by accident. It's not by byproduct. That was his specific intention.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to make the raw emotionality music.
Yeah. It's a really devastating 1-2 punch to have as a musician, which is, one, you have this very sophisticated classical technique that is kind of the bedrock of your entire thing. Layered on top of that is a very forward-thinking, very progressive soundscapes and textures that you overlay over that technique, that is like the sheen over that technique. And then on top of that is just like raw, exposed nerve, fucking like the most devastating, brutal kind of content that this music could possibly be about. It's I mean, I don't know. He's one of a kind. He's really one in a million.
Here's something else that he says. He says, I can play. I was classically trained.
Yep.
I have technique at my disposal. But over the past 5 or 6 years, I've kind of abandoned technique and tried to approach music from a more by ear method or by impulse rather than by theory. I played pretty much everything into the sequencer. So what that means when he says, I played pretty much everything into the sequencer, what that means is there's basically a machine that is like a big brain that is making all of his synthesizers play their stuff together, so that everything is in time, right? So all the drums, there's not a real drummer playing it. It's sounds of drums loaded into a machine and then programmed to play them in this sequence. And then this keyboard over here, this synthesizer over here needs to play or whatever, right? And the sequencer plays it all back. So you tell the sequencer what to play, but when you press play, it's the sequencer playing your music, not you, right? Okay. So he says, I played pretty much everything into the sequencer, but to offset the perfectly quantized drum and bass, meaning like by computer perfectly on time, I tried to use the elements of vocals and guitar as totally rough, usually on the first take, so that the record didn't feel too perfect.
And it, like, A+, because it like mission accomplished, I should say.
Yeah,
like, because you don't get that kind of raw emotionality when you overthink stuff too. You know, when you're on take number 55 or whatever of the vocals. You know,
that's one of my biggest struggles, man. Because you know me, the biggest freaking thing going on in my brain is the perfection, like the let's do it again, you know, like, and my songs that I record on my own, pretty much everything that you're hearing is like take 80.
Right.
And it happens every single time. I make a song, when I'm finishing it, I'm like, dude, that's it. That's exactly what I intended. The emotion and all. And there it is. And then I listen to it later and I'm like, it sounds dead. It sounds hollow. There's nothing real. There's nothing human in there.
I'm kind of the opposite of that, which is why I've always thought our workflow together has always been so complementary. Is because we kind of meet in the middle always. When we make stuff together. I'm the opposite of Brandon in the sense that I'm just like, well, that was good enough. I don't want to do that anymore.
I don't want to do it again.
Like, let's move on. It's cool.
Like, don't you think you should do that again? You're like,
nope.
Yeah, but no. But I don't want to though.
Yeah, I think it's fine. And it's more because I'm always thinking of the bigger picture. I'm thinking of the final product, and I'm like, dog, this is just like the corner puzzle piece. Like, we need to put the whole puzzle together. Like, and the puzzle is going to be sick. Like, look, if that piece is a little crooked, it's fine. It'll be cool. Like, it'll be neat. Like, who cares?
So there's something really interesting here. I'm gonna bust out the guitar, show you something. So we were talking about how Trent Reznor is doing original stuff that other musicians don't do. Okay? And this is interesting. Reading these quotes is interesting to me because I always thought that he sat down in a lab and came up with his original ideas and like, ooh, I noticed no one has done this. Maybe I should do it. And so I'll be the only one doing it. But these quotes make me realize that he happened upon these ideas that no one else is doing sort of unintentionally because he was pursuing an emotion. Mm-hmm. He was pursuing a feeling that he envisioned and is like, okay, let me just let my fingers find where that is.
He was like, what if I played a strawberry today? What would that sound like?
Yeah. and so he like sort of by not going directly at it, came up with a new idea. A really good example of that is something that like some people call it like the Trent Reznor scale. Mm. Okay. Are you familiar with this?
You may have showed me this at one point.
I think I showed it to you when I was recording a reggae cover version of Right Where It Belongs. Right. Which is Nine Inch Nails' song off of With Teeth. Yeah. Which uses, at times, the Trent Reznor scale. Mm-hmm. Okay. So a scale.
What is it really, though?
Is it sequence of notes? Okay.
What is it? What is this scale really, though? Is it truly unique to him, or is it something that he uses a lot?
I will show you. Okay. So what it is? So just a scale, so you know. Have you ever heard anyone play? Okay, that's the major scale. That's major. Okay. And I'm not going to get super into it, but there's a few more scales that are based around that, and
there's a few more scales.
Yeah, there's 6 more actually. Yeah, that make up almost all the Western music that you've ever heard. Okay, every once in a while there will be one that is not one of those, like or something like that. Okay, that's like a fancy, I don't know, they call that Persian scale, Turkish scale, or something. I don't know, but there is one that people call the Trent Reznor scale. Sometimes they call it the Mixolydian minor sixth. So it's the Mixolydian scale with a minor sixth. Okay. So what that means is up top at the higher part of the scale, it's minor. Mm-hmm. But then it has the bottom part of it is the major scale. So the 1, 2, 3 is major, and then from there it's minor. Mm. Okay,
you can already hear.
So it's half and half.
You can already.
It already sounds like Nine Inch Nails, doesn't it?
You can hear it.
And that's why they call it the Trent Reznor scale, is because it's right there for anyone to use. Mm. Okay, but he seems to be the only songwriter who just keeps using it over and over and over to the point where it's like distinctive. It's like part of his freaking thing.
I think Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age has a similar musical trick. Like his guitar solos, you try to just listen to any Josh Homme guitar solo, dear listener, if you're listening to this, listen to any Josh Homme guitar solo and you'll hear that it's not just the tone of his guitar or the way that he plays. It's like the notes that he picks is like in a musical mode or scale, like Brandon's pointing out, that is like almost unique to him because no one else does it. Right.
Just because nobody else is
just because no one else does that. Yeah.
And that's the only reason.
Yeah.
Right. So what you get with this Trent Reznor scale, so it's a Mixolydian scale, and you just flat the sixth in there, is you get something that sounds, you can do all this minor stuff, but when you play the chord, it's a major chord because it has a major third in it. So on Pretty Hate Machine, the song that shows this off the most is Something I Can Never Have.
Yeah.
The piano's just doing that.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole song, by the way. That is another theme on this album, is like one musical thing that like goes through all the sections the whole time. Like the slap bass thing in Terrible Lie. Mm-hmm. Anyway. So that's...
Lay down.
It has that minor sixth in there. But then the bass is... with a major third.
Mm-hmm. And what that creates, the major and minor third being played at the same time creates dissonance. It creates discordant disharmony, much like Trent Reznor himself is. Exactly.
This dissonance.
Yep.
It's so good, man.
Yeah.
So he does that. There's basically at least one song on all of his records that use that scale. And in many times, more than one song.
Yeah.
And, so it's just like, it's just an example of this is more than just aggressive music for the sake of being aggressive. Sort of like, when we were talking about the Misfits, right? Mm. We were talking about how in many cases, the music is like very conventional. It's just played in such a fucking aggressive manner with such an aggressive timbre and aggressive textures that it doesn't sound anymore like it's straight ahead old school music, old school chord shapes, old school melodies, right? But that's not the case with Nine Inch Nails. There are really inventive musical ideas happening here.
All of this is great examples of using music to reinforce the themes that you're writing about. So he's using distortion. He's using dissonance and like disharmony and unfamiliar chordal shapes and scales and modes and stuff. He's using
exactly
all of this aggressive
what sort of
stuff.
Themes could that possibly evoke?
Yeah, dandelions.
Right. Yeah.
Ice cream.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to a baseball game with my daddy. Going to a ball game with my dad. No.
Being excited about a brand new relationship that's going really well. That's what that makes you think of and feel, isn't it?
Buying a new house with my wife.
Yeah, no.
So
disconnection, disharmony, isolation.
Yeah.
Being off balance, everything being wrong. Yeah, exactly.
So he uses
not belonging.
He uses all of these very brilliant, very subtle brilliant little musical tricks. And all of they are a sum greater than the parts or whatever. How do you say that?
Yeah.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts or something like that, right?
Did
I just do it?
That sounds pretty good.
So that's basically, he's if it was a really happy album with some digital distortion on it, you wouldn't necessarily think, that it was, aggressive or mean or sad or whatever. But like the fact that he takes there's a little bit of distortion and a little bit of this kind of scale and a little bit of this texture and a little bit of that, all of it kind of adds up to a very uneasy, unnerving kind of sounding music.
Exactly.
And all of that is to underscore what he's singing about.
Yes.
And
because again, to reiterate, the Trent Reznor scale is half major and half minor.
Right. Yeah.
He doesn't transition from one to the other. He does both at the same time, which whether you consciously understand it or not, which I guarantee you nobody does, you unconsciously feel unsettled.
Like
why am I happy and sad at the same time? Why am I happy about that I'm sad? Why am I sad about the fact that I'm happy? What the fuck is happening with my emotions?
Why, when I put on Head Like a Hole, do I want to dance and put a hole in my head?
Yes, exactly.
It's a really, he's really brilliant guy. But it's like, also though, all that to underscore the themes of the album, right? And the lyrics of this album and the raw emotionality of his performance and all that. But again, it's like all that stuff is the stuff that's right on the surface. Like we've kind of dug into all like the kind of more subtexty stuff in the music that's really like interesting. And as like music nerds and like producers and musicians, like it's fun to dive into that stuff, but it's stuff that might maybe go over people's heads. But the stuff that cannot go over anybody's head is like the themes and the kind of what this album and the lyrics and like what this album's about. Yeah. And it's really dark. It's really, and I said it earlier, it pretty much prevented me from listening to this too much while we've been kind of between
because the effect
episodes.
Was so strong.
It bums me out. It's a really bummer. It's a really bummer album, and it's been raining here in LA, so I've been stuck inside, so it was like kind of perfect. I was like, oh sweet, I can listen to this album like 24/7. And then I started to do that and I'm like, dude, this is a bummer.
I feel teenagery
sad
right now.
I'm at my house. I'm fine, and this is making me sad. But
what's so funny, man, is like all the time, people who are like over 30 or whatever, like us, like so much of the time we think like, man, I wish I could be young again. I wish I could be a teenager again. Yeah. I wish I could be in high school again. But then, like, don't you remember when you actually do feel those feelings? It's like, wait,
no, I don't.
I forgot. It was fucking terrible.
So, I did a little experiment today, right? Because I have the vinyl and it has this insert that comes with the record, and it has all the lyrics, right? And
nice.
I famously, if you've listened to the show, I never read any lyrics or care about anything, but the lyrics were really penetrating into me with this record. They were easy to kind of latch onto because they're so broad and they're so like he's so like exposed and he's so expressive about the things he's thinking about. So what I did, a funny experiment I did, if you want to get a broad sense of the themes of this record, I'm just going to read you one line, the first line from every song. Okay.
Oh my God. Okay. This is interesting. All right, let's do it.
So, and then I think you tell me what you think this album's about. And this is, so,
okay.
God, money, I'll do anything for you. Okay, next song. Hey, God, why are you doing this to me? Next song. Kinda like a cloud, I was way up in the sky and I was feeling some feelings you wouldn't believe. Sometimes I can't believe them myself and I decided I was never coming down. Okay, that one's like maybe a little bit of a respite, sort of.
But still talking about in the clouds related to God still.
Yeah, and like I'm not coming back.
And I'm not coming, yep.
Next song. It's still getting worse after everything I tried.
Oh my God. Right.
Okay, next song. I still recall the taste of my tears. Okay, next song. I can't shake this feeling from my head. There's a devil sleeping in my bed. I'll just finish that one.
Yeah, because
next
because
song.
that one's about sex.
That one's about fucking. Yeah. You give me the reason, you give me control. I gave you my purity you stole. Yikes. Ouch.
Jeez.
Next song. Just when everything was making sense, you took away all my self-confidence. Next song. I'm drunk, and right now I'm so in love with you, and I don't want to think too much about what we should or shouldn't do. Okay.
Okay.
And then last song. Well, you've got me working so hard lately, working my hands until they bleed. So there's a couple that are borderline, right? That could kind of go either way. But I promise you just listen to the rest of the song, and they're not happy songs. they're not about anything.
This is the thing that amazes me about lyrics. It's like, what is the superpower that some songwriters have, lyric writers have, where that doesn't sound just lame and like, stupidly
childish.
Childish.
Yeah.
You know, because it, at least to me, it doesn't.
When he talks about not liking this record, though, I kind of think that's what he's talking about. I think what he's talking about, maybe it's some sounds and stuff. Maybe it's like technique or sounds or something like that too. But like what I think is that I saw a quote where he said, he was basically like, no one's ever going to fucking hear this. So I'm just going to write about whatever I want.
Oh, so like in terms of what the lyrics are.
Yeah. He's like, I'm just going to write whatever and like be as raw as I want because no one's going to hear it anyway. It's like, dude, famous last words. That's exactly how you get a bajillion people to love your stuff.
Nate, you know what that makes me realize? Dude, our next album, no one's going to hear it anyway. We might as well just...
No one's going to hear it anyway.
Yeah, we might as well just put whatever we want on it, man. That's what I think. That idea just came to me. I don't know why. But
But yeah, I mean, so the album essentially, if you had to boil down what this album's about, it's about wrestling with God. It's about wanting to die, I think.
It's about, one of the themes too that I heard in what you just read is things used to be so great.
Yeah.
And now they're fucking terrible.
Which is so funny coming from him, who is someone, while he was making this, was on the precipice of like the coolest life ever. Like, let me just say he went through some really hard shit. He had to go to rehab. He was like a drug addict. He was an alcoholic. Like Trent Reznor had like a really challenging life even while he was famous. But like, dude, he like lived the dream of every musician. He like came from complete obscurity and like it blew up. And now he's like a household name and people around the world pay him to make music for them. You know, like he gets privately commissioned to make music for other artists and creatives and studios and stuff like, you know, like he's like a generational talent, you know, and
he was
like
about to succeed.
Yeah.
But
he was about
to succeed by our standards.
Yeah.
In our eyes. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
And that's always the thing is like, but how does that person who's in those shoes feel?
Yeah.
And if someone is gonna be a Debbie Downer, they're gonna be a Debbie Downer.
It's true
about it. You know, they're gonna find a way to be a Debbie Downer.
I think he's one of the only guys where like, okay, like, you know, like Alice Cooper. Okay, people compare him to like Alice Cooper a lot because he's like very shocking and like, you know, hard rock and like hard music and stuff. But like the difference between someone like Alice Cooper and Trent Reznor is Alice Cooper's like dark, gothic, scary metal, dark, mean thing. That was a shtick, dude.
It's all an exterior.
It's all a fucking...
He's playing a character that he created. Yes.
Yeah. Trent Reznor...
No.
I do not feel that he is drawing from a well that isn't completely authentic.
Yeah.
Like
I agree with you.
He's drawing from a really intensely dark place that I would never want to be in. Like and
that's why we respond to it so much.
That's true.
But dude, but you can relate to it.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
the thing.
Absolutely.
You haven't experienced exactly what he's experienced, but you've experienced yours, which resembles it.
And you also hit on
the way that he puts that shit into words and the way that he puts it into sounds. It's just like feels good, right?
You hit on something where you said like it's amazing that he can take lyrics like this and make them not kind of embarrassing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because part of the power of this record comes from how broad the themes are and how like kind of face value the lyrics are, but he performs them with so much conviction and so much intensity that you're just like, it's like, no, like you mean this shit. Like, cause like you could literally, like some of the worst musicians ever, like they say some really just like bald faced, just like fucking like, man, there's no depth to this. Like,
because they're emotional lies. They're lying.
Yeah.
And that is what is so cringy when an artist gets up there and sings something like that, is because you can, there's fucking science to this. Okay. Like neurosurgeons have studied, have you heard of like mirror neurons? Have you heard about that?
No.
Basically, what they're saying, that due to this research that I know very little about, is that
welcome to the show.
Is it there's a capability that the human brain has to be able to like map upon and perceive what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. The little things about your facial expression, the little things about the ways, the inflections in your voice, the little details about how your voice sounded when you said something, your posture, how long did you pause or how short, and all this stuff that like, even if you're standing here and telling me like, oh no, I'm doing good, man. I'm feeling good. I can tell that you're not.
It's like an uncanny valley thing.
I can tell. Exactly.
It's like, I can tell that's a robot. No matter how good a robot looks, I'll always know it's a robot.
And I think that's what makes us cringe so much when these artists are performing certain things. It's that we can tell, like, dude, you're singing about this like desperate moment. I can tell you've never felt that.
It's because
I have never been in this place that you're singing about. I can just fucking tell.
I think it's because a lot of kind of more subpar artists, they will come from a position of like, they will start off saying, I want to write a sad song, right? And I want to get to the place.
Yeah. And the real answer, why? Because I want to have a sad song.
Yeah, because
in my repertoire.
Yeah,
that's why I want one.
Right. Whereas like Trent Reznor, Pretty Hate Machine, it's like I don't think he was capable of writing anything other than this. Like I don't think he could get, like, this had to come out. Like, he had to get this out of himself, right? Like, this was something he had to express. It was, like, something he had to, like, exercise in, like, the demonic way.
Yes.
Not in the gym way. He had to fucking exercise this demon out of himself to get this out. And you're right. Again, that is, like, what we're responding to is it's, like, this super authentic...
The mirror neurons where you can just tell this is fucking legit.
Yeah, this is legit.
Yes, you can feel it. Yeah, man. And I wanted to give Trent Reznor some credit for, in addition to that.
Oh, you want to pay Trent Reznor a compliment right now?
Yeah, I might as well. We've come this far. I might as well say something nice
about the machine.
Wow, we are really just slathering the admiration all over this guy.
I love this man. I really do. I admire him so much as a creative person. So yeah, go ahead.
My mirror neurons can tell that is a true statement, what you just said. Okay, three quick examples of it's even just beyond, even more than just the authenticity of what he's saying, but the lyrics themselves are constructed in like the way that good poetry classically is. Okay. For example, in Down in It, in the song Down in It. Okay. The lyric, I was up above it, now I'm down in it.
Yeah.
I was up above it, now I'm down in it. Okay. That lets, the way that he says that, he doesn't say, I was up above sadness, now I'm down in sadness. No, he says it.
Right.
It lets your mind fill in what is it? What does he mean by it? What was he up above and now he's down in? And you get what it means.
Yes.
Right? Every person who's heard that song and really thought about that lyrics.
He's so angry. Like,
right. You can tell what he means even if you can't put it into words. Even if you don't know specifically what you mean, you're like, dude, bro, I know exactly what you mean, man.
Yeah.
We used to be man, we are so in it right now.
Yeah.
But it's it. What is it? See, that's fucking poetry right there, man. And that's good lyric writing.
It's it's just good art to like let the listener or the viewer fill in the blanks, right? Like don't explain everything.
It's very refined.
Yeah.
This is not like amateur hour lyric, just sad boy writing. I used to feel good, now I feel bad. Okay.
Yeah.
So you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So the second one. And
I think it's a little rude that you quote some of my own personal songs that I write on the show. I didn't condone that. But I used to be sad and now I'm not. I was saving that for our next record, actually.
You like turn around and take a piece of paper and just rip it in half. Like, well,
yeah,
I guess that's no good.
Yep. Well, I used to be sad, but now I'm not is not going on the next record anymore.
But no, I'm not. Okay. But, okay. The lyric, she says, come inside. I come in. Wait. She says, come inside. I come inside for her.
Okay. Can I just really quickly, the other thing that is almost in parallel that you could say, it's probably as horny as it is angry. This album.
Right.
This album's really horny.
I mean, it is made by someone, what, was he like 23,
like
24?
20 something. Yeah. He's in the early 20s.
Yeah. Oh, he honey.
This is the guy that wrote I Want to Fuck You Like an Animal. Like, he's like a real horned up dude. Like,
yes. And the song on this album, it was Kinda I Want To. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's just about kinky shit, man. That's all that's about.
It's like this album, if you had to distill it, it's like anger, horny, and like blasphemy. That's like pretty much like what this record is.
And that is a real headspace, man. That is a real place.
Yeah, dude. Like that's a frustrated guy. You're all frustrated.
Okay, so the lyric she says, come inside, I come inside for her. I think I'm not sure about the for her. Then second line, she says, give it all, I give everything to her. So why this is good, he's resisting that first instinct is to say the phrase give it all again, like the first line. She says, come inside, I come inside. He uses the same phrase twice. Then he sets it up that he's going to do it again. She says, give it all. What do you expect? He's going to say, I give it all. She says, come inside, I come inside. She says, give it all, I give it all. But no, he doesn't. She says, give it all, I give everything. Mm. Right? Set up, pull the rug from under you.
Right.
Set up expectation, alter expectation. Mm. Set up pattern, disrupt pattern. Mm. Okay? That's fucking classical shit. You have lyrics that are like hundreds of years going back using that convention. Mm. Okay? He's not, and this is what I mean. The place where he's transgressive is not in structural musical ways. Mm-mm. He's very, very refined.
And that's why this album, given how tonally challenging it could be, and I mean tonally in like sounds, production timbres, and like tonally in terms of like what this shit's about. That's why something this challenging can also go like diamond, platinum, right?
Yes.
It's because
it stands up to criticism. It stands up to inspection, what's the word?
And I was going to say
scrutiny. It stands up to scrutiny.
It stands up to scrutiny, but what I was also going to say is that he pushes a lot of boundaries and he breaks a lot of rules, but he doesn't break some of the, like, there are like foundational things that we love about music that he doesn't fuck with, right?
He keeps it in place.
Yeah.
And not only does he just keep it in place, he's presenting a very good example of it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like that can sit equally with the greats of the past. You know?
Yeah.
These are good fucking lyrics.
Yeah.
The third one in Ring Finger. So, right. So in the very first verse, he says, if I was twice the man I could be, I'd still be half of what you need. Okay. So he's playing with a theme of partialness and wholeness. Okay. If I was twice what I am, that would be half of what you need.
Right.
Okay. So he's playing with the inverses of doubling and size and relationship.
That
okay?
just hurt my feelings.
Then
I've been there,
all
brother.
the way, right? Yeah, you know that feel, bro. If I was twice the man I could be, I'd still be half of what you need.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the song, the whole song goes by, and that little like motif, that little like analogy or whatever, is just hanging out in your brain, and he doesn't touch it again until the last verse. He just ends it and wraps it up with this one line. I get everything I want when I get part of you.
Oof. Damn, dog.
So he plugs it back into this whole theme of size,
You know what
relationship.
That's called codependency. He needs to find value in himself.
No, it's called a lyrical motif, a theme of the size relate. I am small, you are large.
Yes.
Thing. Like that's in like fucking sea shanties and like fucking limericks and like Shakespeare sonnets and shit. That is like a old time and used mechanic of lyrics,
Yeah. And it just speaks to, like, again, the dark place that he was coming from, and it's reflected in every single aspect of this album.
Yes.
Like, it all is a reflection of him. It's just a fucking mirror reflection of this guy, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like it's crazy because, like, think of while you were talking about, while you were reading those lyrics, I was thinking of all of the, like, tortured, woe is me, like, fucking bros that came in the wake of this kind of stuff and who are like, I just want to, like, I hate them all. Like, some of them are great, right? But, like, I was thinking of, like, Stained. Because I was thinking of that song, Half the Man. Oh, no, that's Stone Temple Pilots. Half the man I used to be.
Yeah, careful. That's a good band.
That's a good song. Yeah, that's a good song.
And a good song, too. Yeah, man.
But I was thinking of, like, Stained and, like, Puddle of Mud and, like, all the crappy, like, fucking, like new grunge, post-grunge. Yeah, and I'm just thinking of, like how contrived all of that is when you put it up to something like this.
It's the mirror neuron thing.
It is.
I'm telling you. That's why you fucking hate Kid Rock when you hear it, because you can just tell. Even before I knew it wasn't true, I could just feel it's not true.
You can tell.
I don't even know that it's not true, but I know it's not true.
It's favorite song time.
For you, what are your, and you can't say 8 of them, but what are your faves? And also, too, I want to know if any to you are like less favorite, not as strong. Sure. A little, maybe I'll skip this one.
So I will say, like, I think side A was like, I can basically say every song on side A is like my favorite.
You're a vinyler. So as always, you have to tell me where's the side A, B divide.
So this is smart sequencing of a record, by the way. If you had to guess which song, you don't, I wouldn't pretend like you may or may not be familiar with like why this would be, but like, could you guess which one is the delineation point? What's the last song on side A, you think?
Well, I mean, my first guess, just because there's 10 songs, would be that the last song is Something I Can Never Have, the 5th song.
Yes, but there's a good reason. There's another reason. It's not just a half and half thing for why that one is where it is. It's because it's quiet. It's a quieter song. And what happens is, I forget exactly what it's called, but on the grooves of a vinyl record, the closer you get to the center of the record, the grooves actually get compressed and they actually get smaller. So what'll happen is if you have a really loud song with a lot of bass content towards the inner grooves, the grooves are actually going to overlap each other when you press the record. So you actually have to, a lot of times you like pay attention to this if you ever see records that are like kind of on the longer side too, and pay attention to the songs that are on the innermost of the groove. Usually they're either shorter or they're quieter.
Or quiet. Wow, that's interesting.
And there's good reason for that. That's like a technical thing. But Dude,
Nate said something interesting, you guys.
I did. I know certain things. Yeah. So, something I can never have is the last song.
Nice.
But I will say that like pretty much the whole of side A is like basically perfect. But like Head Like a Hole is like one of my favorite songs of all time. I know that's like super basic answer, but like that song fucking rips me in half. It's so fun. It's such a fucking sick song. Well, my dream is to like be in the pit at a Nine Inch Nails show and when he plays fucking Head Like a Hole, I would lose my fucking mind, dude.
Yes, like a religious experience.
It really would be.
Since you brought up Head Like a Hole, by the way, I can't believe we've gotten this deep and this long into the discussion. This is the first time that we've met. Like all the fans of this album have probably been screaming, "Talk about Head Like a Hole, you fucking assholes!"
So obviously Head Like a Hole. It makes me want to fucking slam my face into a wall in the best way. I love that song. And then obviously like I love Terrible Lie. I love Down in It. I love Sanctified. Like something I can never have. It's a bummer song. It's really good though. It's just kind of a bummer. The one that really stands out to me on the second side is the second to last song, The Only Time. I think that song is really the most different from the rest of the album. And it's funny because listening to the demos, that's the song that sounds most like what this was before it got really angry and mean. That song to me, it kind of has almost like almost like a hip hop, like kind of, there's like a very danceable undercurrent to it, but it's kind of like funky. Like it has kind of like this funky, like fun, more upbeat.
It's kind of.
It's got like a groove to it that like just it's not so robotic and angular. It's like it has like this like very human like pulse to it, and it is kind of a little more uplifting feeling from it. And that to me, that's why it stood out to me, just because I'm like, this is a really different side for this collection of songs. You know what I mean?
By the way, that song has a really, really great example of what you were pointing out earlier about the lyrics and the musical structure of everything suiting the theme, the meaning of the song. That maybe I'm all messed up. Maybe I'm all messed up.
He's drunk.
The placement of the lyrics is all messed up.
Yeah.
It's not just counting. So the beat is in fours. It's not maybe I'm all messed up. Maybe I'm all messed up. Maybe no, it's like maybe I'm all messed up. Maybe I'm all messed up. Maybe it's all fucking.
He's like pushing.
Right. The syllables don't fall where you're expecting them to fall because maybe I'm all fucked up, man.
Yeah, the first line is
so I'm going to structure
drunk.
the song to portray that fucking feeling, you know?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
How about you? Do you have any standout songs other than songs 1 through 10?
Well, other than Head Like a Hole, the obvious fucking one. I love the song Sin.
Okay.
That just
that one again.
It's the it's just like the fucking, we're in the club now.
Yeah, that's one.
So fucking dope. Just headbanging.
That's
dancing.
one where you're just at the club and man. Everyone's all wet, and then you turn around and fucking Blade's here.
Right. Yes. Blade walks, and then the blood sprinklers come on.
Blood sprinklers turn on.
Yeah, dude. Blade. All of a sudden, Blade's. Oh my god. Yeah. Sin. Right. Any song that is playing when you notice that Blade is in the club, I'm a fan of. And
but he's gonna kill you.
That's the one.
But but Blade's here to kill you specifically. Yeah. That
and when I was a kid, so this is one of the albums that my older brother used to listen to all the time, and like my only exposure to Nine Inch Nails and to this album, and to this is one of those like older brother exposure examples, that I know a lot of people with older siblings have, that got me into the cool music that I would never have heard otherwise, And so he used to let me listen to his CD of Pretty Hate Machine every once in a while. And the song that I always really latched onto was Ring Finger at the end. There's just something about that.
Oh, yeah. It's really good.
And just how he just lets it go around like 4 times without fucking with it, without changing it. It's just that little techno kick drum thing in there, it just lets you vibe with a simple thing after this fucking onslaught of sound. Just hang out with this little catchy melody for a second.
Yeah.
And you think he's about to start singing? Nope. Let it go around again. This is such a good song, man. I don't know, just that melody. I've always loved it.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of no wrong answers. They're all.
There's 2 that to me are like
weaker.
Yeah. And only weaker in the sense that this is an album full of songs that have their own whole planet, their own ecosystem of awesomeness and greatness and memorability. And there's a couple that to me, they just feel like they're songs. They're good songs.
Okay.
They're not like something that I am obsessed with for the rest of my life. They're just songs, Kinda I Want To. I feel like it's a song. All right.
Okay.
It's a song. And that's What I Get. It's a song.
I'm just trying to remember them off the top of my head now.
See? See? If I said Sanctified, you would immediately go, Sanctified. See? This is my point. When I say those songs, it's like, wait, which one is that?
It's not like if I said... It's not like if I said Terrible Lie, we would both just start going, Terrible Lie!
That's what happens in my mind.
Terrible Lie! Okay. Yeah.
See?
No, you're right. You're right. Those are, okay. I can't remember.
And just that.
The 2 you're talking about.
That like drum beat
Terrible
thing.
Lie! Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking sick. There's nothing we need to say more that hasn't already been said about this record. It's classic. It's amazing. You're stupid if you don't like it, and you're stupid if you haven't heard it yet. You should do that. Get on it.
Yeah.
Brandon, would you recommend? This is such a dumb segment. I say it every time.
We should get rid of the recommend. Well, you tell us what you think, people. Chat. Yeah, send us an email. Tell us, should we get rid of the would you recommend? Because I think it's like...
Send this episode to 1,000 of your closest family and friends if you want us to get rid of this segment. That would really do us a huge favor.
Yeah, it just feels to us every time that like we get to this point at the end and we said everything that we've said and how much we love this. And then it's like, okay.
But that's because
would you recommend that other people listen to it?
That's because
and then,
every album we've picked so far has been kind of like a softball toss-up, right? The closest one was Trout Mask, but even that, I picked it because I thought we were going to maybe not like it, right? So we haven't, it's probably time soon we pick maybe ones that are like diamonds in the rough, or maybe they're bad, but they're interesting to us for some reason. I don't know.
Okay.
Because I've got a couple like that I would like to discuss. Like ones that I'm like, okay, everyone likes this and I fucking hate it. Like, what do you think? There's one, I just like don't want to listen to it. So I haven't picked it yet, but eventually I will pick it because I have to.
I have one coming up that I'm going to enjoy picking so much. And you are going to be like, what the fuck?
Really?
Like, what are you doing to me?
Really?
This
In what way? Why?
I don't want to give too much away.
I
don't want to give too much away. But I mean, basically, like in the way of that, I am torturing you and committing you to have to listen to this for 2 weeks, and you're going to suffer.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm going to love it.
Well, if you want to hear more Playback, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/blackmarketdub. You can get exclusive episodes and bonus content over there for only $5 a month. Excuse me. We are also a band. All the music featured in this episode is available to stream for free on Bandcamp at blackmarketdub.bandcamp.com.
And you can send us an email.
Yeah, you can send us an
responding to should we cut the recommendation thing and anything else that you want to say.
Yeah, at blackmarketreggae@gmail.com. The best way, though, to get a hold of us is join us over on Patreon. We have a whole robust community over there. Everyone's over there. You're missing out big time. You're the one that everyone says should be there, and you're missing out. So you should go there and join and hurry up and do it. Now.
That's right. Both Horseflesh and Groove Stranger are both over there.
Yeah. Who only
and the rest of the community as well.
Yes. So yeah, we love you. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Playback. Brandon, do you have any final words for us before we leave?
Oh my God! You know the thing that I'm realizing right now is that I didn't pick a lyric to go out on.
It's okay. I'll do it.
Okay, thank you, Nate. You're going to save me for the ending lyric.
Hey, God, why are you doing this to me? Am I not living up to what I'm supposed to be? Why am I seething with this animosity? Hey, God, I think you owe me a great big apology. Terrible lie. Do, 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 do.